You think a food crisis begins when shelves go empty. Wrong. It begins when everything is still there, but no longer enough to support your body the way it used to. During the fertilizer crisis of 2026, as costs rise, farmers cut back production. Food does not disappear immediately. It becomes less, more expensive, and less nutritious week by week. You still eat. You still feel full, but energy drops. Recovery slows. Thinking becomes less clear, and that is the biggest problem. You do not realize you are lacking until your body starts paying the price. This video is not about eating to feel full. It is about 12 items that keep you functioning normally when the system begins to slip. Stay until the end, because what you overlook first is also what disappears first. 12. Potato flakes, a meal that does not need fuel in 2026, as fertilizer costs continue to rise and farmers begin to cut planting area. What you see today is only the early stage. Nitrogen fertilizer prices have risen around 30 to 40% during recent periods of volatility. And when that cost rises, output does not drop immediately on supermarket shelves. It drops in the field, then slowly spreads into your choices. And what disappears first is not dry goods. It is fresh produce. You may still see potatoes today, but in a few months, as planting cycles tighten, supply begins to shrink little by little. And the problem is not just whether you can buy potatoes or not. It is a simpler question, but one most people never think about. Can you cook them? I once heard a 62-year-old man say, "I can still buy food, but the electricity bill rises so fast that I start skipping meals. Not because I do not have food, but because I do not want to turn on the stove." It sounds extreme, but when energy costs rise, every time you cook becomes a decision. A pot of boiled potatoes is no longer a simple task. It is time, heat, and money. And in a crisis, those things are no longer cheap. This is the point most people overlook. You do not lack food. You lack the ability to turn it into a meal. When gas is expensive, electricity is unstable, or you have to save every unit of energy, foods that require long cooking become a burden. And that is why potato flakes are not the better option. They are the option that continues to work. With just hot water, even warm water, you can turn it into a meal instantly. No large stove needed, no planning required, no additional resources consumed. Under normal conditions, this seems small, but when the energy system is under pressure, this becomes the line between being able to eat and not being able to eat. In terms of shelf life, potato flakes can be stored for 10 to 15 years if kept sealed and dry. Meanwhile, fresh potatoes usually last only a few weeks before sprouting or spoiling. Fresh potatoes give you a few weeks of security. Potato flakes give you years of control. This difference is not just a number. It is the gap between preparation and reaction. Storage is very simple, but often done wrong. Potato flakes only need to be kept in a sealed, dry environment, away from light and especially away from moisture. The most common mistake is opening the bag and leaving it near the cooking area, where steam accumulates after each use. Even a small amount of moisture is enough to reduce quality and significantly shorten shelf life. In terms of value, potato flakes are not a superfood, but they provide a quick, stable source of energy, helping the body maintain function when choices are limited. And in terms of cost, each serving from potato flakes is far cheaper than ready-made foods, especially when prices rise week by week during a crisis. This is not something you buy when needed. This is something you must already have before things begin to change. In a crisis, The most expensive thing is not food. It is the energy required to cook it. 11. Egg powder freezing protein before it disappears. You will not notice a lack of protein in the first week. You still eat every day. You still feel full. And that is exactly why it is dangerous. In 2026, as fertilizer costs continue to rise, pressure spreads to animal feed, corn, soybeans, and drives up the cost of raising chickens. When costs rise, production is reduced, and fresh eggs, one of the most common protein sources, begin to fluctuate rapidly. Not by disappearing all at once, but by becoming less, more expensive, harder to access each week. Unlike a lack of food, a lack of protein does not stop you immediately. It allows you to continue, but gradually weaker each day. At first, you just feel slightly more tired. Then you recover more slowly after small tasks. Then you begin to notice your body no longer responds the same way. Not because you are eating less, but because what you are eating is no longer enough to maintain your body. This is how a real food crisis unfolds. Not through immediate hunger, but through silent decline. This is what most people overlook. Carbohydrates keep you full, but protein helps you recover. You can continue for a few days on carbohydrates, but without protein, your body cannot sustain itself long-term. And when that happens, you do not collapse immediately. You slide down, little by little. That is why egg powder is not just a substitute. It is a way to preserve protein from a system that is gradually shrinking. In dry form, when kept sealed and away from moisture, egg powder can last from 5 to 10 years. Meanwhile, fresh eggs last only about 3 to 5 weeks. You can still buy eggs today, but you cannot be sure you will be able to buy them a few months from now. And that is the difference between having a stable protein source and depending on the market every week. In terms of storage, egg powder needs to be kept sealed, away from moisture, light, and high temperatures. A simple step that is often overlooked is, try using it before you actually need it. The common mistake is not failing to buy it, but buying it and not knowing how to use it when the situation occurs. In terms of value, egg powder provides complete protein, one of the most important factors for maintaining muscle, recovery, and endurance under prolonged stress. And in terms of cost, while fresh egg prices can fluctuate significantly over time, the cost per serving of egg powder is far more stable. This is not something you buy when shelves begin to empty. This is something you prepare in advance, while you still have options. Fresh eggs disappear in a few weeks. The need for protein does not. 10. Dried seaweed escaping the land when fertilizer becomes expensive. Land is no longer an advantage. It becomes a bottleneck. Farmers cut planting area. Growing seasons are shortened, and the supply chain begins to contract from the source. Most of the food you are used to depends on land. But there is a group of foods that has never been in that loop from the start. No land, no fertilizer, no seasons. That is seaweed. You will not see it disappear at the same time as fresh vegetables because it does not follow the same path. When fields are affected, seaweed still exists in a different ecosystem, the ocean, and that is the biggest difference. This is not food surviving within the system. This is food outside the system. But the real value of seaweed is not in the fact that it does not depend on land. It is in what most people do not notice: trace minerals. When fresh vegetables decline, you do not lack calories immediately. You do not lack protein immediately. But you begin to lack smaller and more critical elements: iodine, zinc, magnesium. The things your body needs to maintain balance. You still eat, but you feel different, more tired, colder, slower, and you do not know why. That is how a real food crisis unfolds. Not through hunger, but through imbalance. Seaweed addresses that exact point. Not through large quantity, but through high nutrient density in a very small amount. You do not need to eat much, but if you lack it, your body will pay over time. This is a type of food that does not fill you up, but keeps your internal system from collapsing. In terms of shelf life, dried seaweed can be stored for 5 to 10 years if kept sealed and away from moisture. Meanwhile, fresh vegetables last only a few days before losing value. But the difference is not just time. Fresh vegetables give you a short-term sense of health. Seaweed helps your body maintain a stable state over the long term. Storage is very simple, but often done wrong. Keep it sealed, away from light, and especially away from moisture. Once seaweed absorbs moisture, it loses its crispness, quality declines, and it spoils faster. A simple tip is to divide it into smaller portions and add desiccant packs to maintain long-term stability. The biggest mistake is not that you do not buy seaweed. It is that you buy it, but never use it. You are not used to the taste. You do not know how to combine it, and when needed, you ignore it. In reality, just mixing it into rice, soup, or eating it directly, you can add what your body is lacking without even realizing it. The cost of seaweed is much lower than the value it provides. You do not need to stockpile much, but without it, you will pay through a decline that you cannot immediately see. When land becomes the problem, what does not need land will endure. And in a system that is gradually tightening, what exists outside of it becomes what you can rely on for the long term. 9. Lentils, the crop that survives when fertilizer is scarce. You will not think about lentils until meat is no longer an option every week. In 2026, as fertilizer costs continue to rise, the pressure does not stop in the field. It spreads to animal feed. Corn and soy become more expensive, raising the cost of livestock, and farmers are forced to reduce herds. You do not see empty shelves immediately. You see prices rise. You see meat packages shrink. Then one day you realize what you used to buy every week is no longer a habit. This is how a crisis begins. Not through a lack of food, but through the loss of what you used to rely on. While most crops depend on fertilizer to maintain yield, legumes, like lentils, follow a different path. Through their ability to fix nitrogen from the air, they rely less on chemical fertilizer. When input costs rise, farmers do not abandon everything. They choose to keep what can survive with the least dependency. And that is why, when the system tightens, lentils are often what remains. Someone once told me, "I do not lack food. I just no longer buy meat every week like before." Does that sound familiar? You still eat, you still feel full, but you start to change without noticing. And that is when lentils shift from a side dish to a primary protein source. The point most people overlook is this: carbohydrates keep you full, but protein helps you sustain. You can live a few days on carbohydrates, but without protein, your body does not recover the same way. You do not collapse immediately. You weaken day by day, quietly but steadily. In terms of shelf life, dry lentils can be stored from 10 to 25 years when kept sealed, dry, and cool, especially when using mylar bags and oxygen absorbers. Meanwhile, fresh meat lasts only about 3 to 5 days without refrigeration. Meat is something you have to keep buying. Lentils are something you can forget until you truly need it. This difference is not just about time. It is the difference between dependence and control. But this is not a food without cost. The most common mistake is looking only at the low price and ignoring the more important factor: cooking time and water. Lentils cook faster than many other beans, but they still require heat and planning. In a situation where every cooking session must be considered, you need to know how to use them efficiently. Pre-soaking, batch cooking, and combining with energy-saving heat sources. In terms of value, lentils provide protein and fiber, helping maintain stable energy and a lasting feeling of fullness. And in terms of cost, they are one of the cheapest protein sources per gram, a clear advantage when food prices fluctuate week by week. This is not something you buy when you need it. This is something you must already have before you realize you need it. Meat gives you a sense of security for a few days. Lentils keep you going for months. 8. Iodized salt. The silent deficiency you do not notice where the problem begins. There are no clear signs, no warning. Just one day you feel slightly slower, then a little more. You still eat, still function normally, but performance is no longer the same. And the most dangerous part is, you do not know where the cause lies. In a food crisis, when fertilizer becomes expensive and production declines, what disappears first is not calories. It is the small micronutrients your body needs every day. Iodine is one of them. It does not appear clearly on your plate, but it controls a critical system, the thyroid, where your energy, body temperature, heart rate, and reaction speed are regulated. When iodine declines, the body does not stop. It just operates more slowly. You do not collapse. You continue, but less efficiently. This is the hardest type of decline to notice, because everything still seems normal. The problem is this: most people think they have prepared enough. You have salt. You season your food every day. But regular salt only adds taste. It does not provide the function your body needs. The difference between regular salt and iodized salt is not in how it tastes, but in how your body functions afterward. The amount of iodine your body needs each day is measured in micrograms, very small. But lacking it over time, you will pay through a decline you cannot immediately see. Not through hunger, but through a slowing down in everything you do. Iodized salt can be stored almost indefinitely if kept dry and sealed. No electricity needed. No refrigeration required. This is one of the easiest things to store, yet also one of the most overlooked. The biggest mistake is not that you do not have salt. It is that you have it, but not the type your body needs. You do not lack food. You do not lack energy. But if you lack iodine, you lose something more important: the ability to maintain a normal state. You still eat, but your body slows down, and you do not know why. 7. Dried mushrooms maintaining morale. It is not hunger that makes you give up first. It is monotony. When every meal starts to feel the same, no aroma, no flavor, no sensation, you do not stop because you lack calories. You stop because you no longer want to eat. In a food crisis, especially when fertilizer reduces the diversity of fresh foods, the first thing to disappear is not energy. It is the eating experience. And when that disappears, your morale begins to decline. Dried mushrooms are not something you store to feel full. They are what you need to keep eating over the long term. Unlike most other foods, mushrooms can be grown from organic waste, decaying wood, straw, biological waste, with less dependence on chemical fertilizer. That makes them less affected when the agricultural system tightens. But the real value of dried mushrooms is not in their origin. It is in what very few people prepare for: flavor. A meal can be nutritionally sufficient, but without flavor, you will eat less without realizing it. And when that continues, your body begins to fall short. Dried mushrooms provide umami, one of the core tastes that stimulates appetite. With just a small amount, you can turn a simple meal into something you want to eat more of. And in a long-term crisis, that is not a luxury. It is survival. In terms of shelf life, dried mushrooms can be stored for 5 to 10 years if kept sealed and away from moisture. No refrigeration needed. No special conditions required. Just a dry and stable environment. But the most common mistake lies in mindset. Many people underestimate flavor and focus only on calories. They prepare enough food, but do not prepare for having to eat the same thing for weeks. The cost of dried mushrooms is low compared to the impact they provide. You do not need much. But without them, you will realize something very clearly. You do not live only by eating. You live by the ability to want to eat. And when that disappears, everything else begins to fall apart. You do not live only by calories. You live by the ability to keep eating. 6. Chia seeds retaining water. You think the problem is lack of water. Wrong. The real problem is, your body cannot retain water. You may drink enough every day, even more than usual. But a few hours later, you feel tired again. Slower, less focused. Not because you have not drunk enough, but because the water does not stay long enough for your body to use. This is the most dangerous type of deficiency, not obvious dehydration, but dehydration at a micro level. You are not thirsty, but your performance gradually declines. You do not collapse, but you cannot maintain a stable state in a dry diet, low in fresh vegetables, low in water-rich foods. This happens faster than you think. You still drink, but each time only solves part of the problem, and then you need to drink again. In a situation where water is not always abundant, this is not a long-term solution. Chia seeds do not solve the problem by giving you more water. They change how your body retains water. When mixed with water, chia seeds form a gel in the digestive system, slowing absorption and keeping water in your body longer. That means with the same amount of water, your body can use more of it. This is the shift most people overlook. You do not need to drink more. You need to retain more. In terms of shelf life, chia seeds can be stored for 4 to 5 years if kept sealed, dry, and away from heat. No refrigeration needed, but they must be protected from light and moisture to maintain stable quality. The common mistake is thinking that drinking more water is enough. But if your body cannot retain it, you will always be in a state of deficiency, no matter how much you try to compensate. Chia seeds provide omega-3, fiber, and support digestion. But their real value is not in nutrition. It is in helping your body function more stably with what you have. You do not lack water. You lack the ability to retain it. 5. Gelatin. The ability to recover. One day passes, you are still fine. 2 days, 3 days, everything continues. But by the 3rd week, you begin to notice your body no longer returns to its original state as quickly as before. Not because you eat less, but because you do not have enough of what your body needs to repair itself. In a food crisis, most people focus on calories, eating enough to avoid hunger. But the body does not only need energy to function, it needs material to rebuild. Collagen makes up about 25 to 30% of the body's total protein, and it is directly connected to joints, connective tissue, and the digestive system. Things that are under stress every day. When collagen is lacking, the body does not stop. It continues, but less efficiently. You do not collapse immediately. You just feel everything becoming slightly heavier, then lasting a bit longer. And that is how decline begins. Not loud, not obvious, but accumulating over time. Gelatin is a simple way to bring that missing part back. No need for much, no complexity. Just a small amount each day can make a difference. And because it is in dry form, gelatin can be stored for many years, even more than a decade if kept sealed and away from moisture. No electricity needed, no refrigeration required. The most common mistake is thinking that as long as you still have energy, you are fine. But energy does not guarantee recovery. You can keep working, keep eating, but your body is no longer repairing what is wearing down. And this is what few people realize. Over a prolonged period, what determines your outcome is not how strong you are. It is how quickly you recover. You do not weaken immediately, but without recovery, you cannot maintain your state. You do not collapse at once. You collapse gradually each day. 4. Ghee sustaining warmth energy. There are days when you eat enough, but still feel exhausted. Not because you lack food, but because your body is using more energy than you think. Even when you do nothing, your body still needs energy to maintain heart rate, regulate temperature, and run internal systems. An adult uses about 1,500 to 2,000 kilocalories per day just to exist. And under cold or stress, this can increase by 10 to 20% without you noticing. The problem is not the amount you eat. It is the energy density of what you eat. Fat provides about 9 kilocalories per gram, nearly double that of carbohydrates or protein. That means you need less to reach the same energy level. And when food supply is limited, this becomes a major advantage. Ghee is a form of clarified fat, with water and impurities removed. Because of that, it is more stable and does not require refrigeration. When kept sealed and away from light, ghee can last from 1 to 3 years, while fresh butter only lasts a few weeks. But the key point is not time. It is how your body uses energy. When you eat less and more monotonously, your ability to absorb nutrients declines. Ghee does not just provide energy. It also helps your body absorb fat-soluble vitamins such as A, D, E, K, elements that are often lacking during a crisis. The common mistake is cutting fat due to health concerns. But in a shortage, the issue is not eating healthy. It is maintaining enough energy for the body to function. You may eat enough in quantity, but if the energy is not dense enough, your body still falls short. And when that happens, you do not notice immediately. You just feel more tired, slower, and no longer have the strength to sustain. You are not hungry, but you are still exhausted. 3. Coconut milk eating but still absorbing. You may eat enough every day, but your body can still lack nutrients. Not because you eat incorrectly, but because your body cannot absorb them. In a poor diet, low variety, low fat, this happens more than you think. A group of important vitamins such as A, D, E, K are fat-soluble. Without fat alongside them, your body absorbs a significant portion less of what you just consumed. Simply put, you eat, but you do not retain much. And in a food crisis, when fresh and diverse foods decline, this becomes a major gap that most people do not see. This is the point where many people get misled. You look at your meal, there are still vegetables, still carbohydrates, and you think you are fine. But if fat is missing, especially over time, your body starts to function less efficiently. You are not immediately deficient. You just cannot fully use what you have. Coconut milk is not a main food, but it is a trigger. It provides fat that helps your body absorb nutrients better from other foods. A small amount can make a big difference. This is something you do not need much of, but without it, you lose part of the value of your entire meal. In terms of energy, fat provides about 9 kilocalories per gram, significantly higher than carbohydrates and protein at about 4 kilocalories per gram. That means you not only improve absorption, but also increase the energy density of your intake without needing to eat more. In terms of shelf life, canned coconut milk can be stored for 2 to 5 years if kept in a cool place, away from high temperatures. No complex conditions needed, but it should be protected from direct sunlight to maintain stable quality. The most common mistake is trying to eat enough while removing fat due to health concerns. Under normal conditions, that may be reasonable. But in a crisis, the issue is not eating less fat. It is whether your body can use the nutrients. You do not lack food. You just do not use it effectively. It is not what you eat. It is how much your body can use. Have you ever eaten enough, but still felt lacking? 2. Bone broth powder long-term endurance after 2 weeks. You are still fine. After 3 weeks, you begin to feel different. Not because you lack food, but because your body no longer endures as well as before. In the early stage of a food crisis, the problem is not hunger. You can still consume enough calories. But when the diet becomes monotonous, lacking minerals and amino acids, the body starts to change. You feel more tired, soreness lasts longer, sleep becomes shallow. Not because you are doing more, but because your body no longer has what it needs to maintain itself. The body needs more than energy to function. It needs minerals and amino acids to keep systems stable. Glycine, an amino acid found in bone broth, plays an important role in supporting joints, digestion, and sleep. When it is lacking, you do not collapse immediately. You just feel your body becoming heavier over time. The decline does not appear instantly. It accumulates. And when you notice it, you have already lost part of your ability to maintain your original state. Bone broth powder is not what makes you full. It is what helps you endure longer. A small amount each day can provide minerals and amino acids that a simple diet often lacks. This is not a quick solution, but a long-term one. Bone broth powder can be stored for 5 to 10 years if kept sealed and dry. No cold chain needed, no special requirements. This is a major advantage compared to perishable fresh foods. Its cost may be higher than basic items like salt or starch. But when you consider long-term health maintenance, that cost is far lower than the consequences of decline. You can survive a few days on calories, but you cannot sustain weeks without foundational elements. This is not something you feel on the first day, but it is what determines how far you can go. Energy helps you today. Minerals help you get through next month. How long do you think you can maintain your current state if your diet becomes repetitive? 1. Nutritional yeast maintaining clarity. You do not realize your thinking is slowing down until you start making wrong decisions. Not immediately. You just take a few extra seconds to react. You forget small things. You reread a line, but do not understand it right away. And the most dangerous part is, you do not realize it is happening. In a food crisis, when fertilizer reduces fresh produce and dietary diversity, what declines first is not calories or protein. It is micronutrients, especially B vitamins. This group of vitamins is directly tied to brain function, energy metabolism, nervous system maintenance, memory support, and concentration. An adult only needs a very small amount of B vitamins each day, measured in milligrams. But when lacking, the impact is not small. A deficiency can reduce processing speed, focus, and decision accuracy. You still eat. You still have energy. But your mind is no longer as clear as before. This is the key point. You do not collapse because of a lack of food. You collapse because of the decisions you make when your mind is no longer accurate. Nutritional yeast is a simple way to fill that gap. It provides B complex and some protein in a very small daily amount. No complex preparation needed. No special conditions required. Nutritional yeast can be stored for 2 to 5 years if kept sealed and dry. The cost is low, but the impact is significant if you lack it. You can prepare a lot of food, but if your brain is no longer functioning clearly, everything you prepared becomes less effective. You do not realize you lack vitamins until you can no longer think clearly. You do not realize what is changing until everything is already different. A crisis does not arrive as a shock. It comes slowly. It takes things away one by one. Not enough to cause panic, but enough to force you to adapt. And then one day, you look back and realize that what used to always be there is no longer the same. These 12 items are not meant to make you feel safe. They are meant to keep you from being caught off guard. Because in the end, what matters is not how much you have. It is whether, when things change, you can still remain who you are. If that day comes sooner than you expect, are you ready?